Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics, coming to you live on Trust TV, your go-to platform for everything politics, policy, and governance. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Welcome to the program. Tonight, the debate on state police has taken a significant step towards developing what actually many Nigerians are in support of, especially as all 36 states of the Federation have now submitted their position on the matter. This was disclosed by the Governor of Kaduna State, Obasani, after the 147th National Economic Council meeting in Abuja on Thursday, I beg your pardon. Now, the move signals growing consensus on the need for state-controlled policing, a shift that could redefine security architecture across Nigeria. But what does this mean for national security, governance, and the delicate balance of power between the federal and state authorities? Joining us tonight to break this down is Dr. Kabir Adamu. He's the CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence and a renowned expert on security matters. Doctor, as always, a pleasure to have you join us on the program. Good evening to you. All right. First, let's set the ball in motion by listening into the thoughts of Governor Obasani of Kaduna State, who was speaking on behalf of the governors after that 147th National Executive Council meeting in Abuja about the future of national security and why the states are all in support of state policing.
FCT is not a state, it's territory, and they explain why they have not submitted. They gave reason, but 36 states have all submitted their own position on the subject of state police, and I want to say it here clearly that most of us are in agreement for the submission of state police.
One issue that the council agreed on was the request of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission for a repeal of the existing Act of Parliament establishing it and its replacement with a new one. The Commission had also sought alternative and improved funding to the institution. The Council gave the RMAFC the go-ahead to forward a draft bill to the National Assembly and also approved the recommendation of improved funding for the Commission.
The issue of the tax reforms was not a subject matter of the NEC meeting today. It was not any topic for conversation. It only came tangentially in the discussion about the funding for RAMFAC. And because in the proposal itself for tax reform, they try also to deal with several of these ancillary needs. Institutions that require special funding. And therefore, it was said in the interim, NEC agrees for about 0.05.
Right. Except there from Kende Amodu's report on the National Executive Council meeting, the 147th session, where the governors were giving their thoughts about some of these trending issues, especially with regards to the creation of state police. Now, Nigeria's long battle, dare I say, with insecurity has been, one of the focal issues on the front burner on the national debate front, especially given the history around the fight against Boko Haram insurgency in northeast Nigeria, the banditry question in northwest and north central states, and how the security architecture, the current security architecture, has been unable to significantly address some of these issues in a manner that would give Nigerians the confidence to believe in the security apparatus to get the job done. Yes, some significant developments have been recorded over the past couple of months, but then again, the idea behind the creation of state police, especially from the side of the proponents, is not to compete with the federal authorities, but to offer an alternative to address some of the gaps that exist currently within our security architecture. And that's why the 36 state governors have given their their support to the idea of creating a state police. Now, we understand that it is not yet done and dusted. There will be further consultations as well as some meetings that will be billed for January 2025. That is what we understand is the federal government's position going forward. But all is fair to say, all is now set for the creation of state police, majorly because the body language of the Tinubu administration seems to be in support and in tandem with what the governors want going forward. We're trying to reestablish connection to our guest, who is a renowned security expert and the chief executive of Beacon Security and Intelligence, Dr. Kabir Adam, who will be helping us break this down. Do not forget that today you get to be a part of the conversation as well. As you can imagine, everyone has a thing or two to say about the current state of security. It is not just a northern thing, it is neither a southwest or southeastern thing. It is a national concern because the security has become a top priority for the better part of the last decade or more in this country. So this is why the conversation is on the front burner on Daily Politics tonight. A little later, we'll be opening the phone lines for you so you can join the conversation, weigh in, and have your say about what you think this would actually do in adding value to the polity, in adding value to national security, because that is what the governors envision the creation of state police will actually do. I mean, so many of these governors have, at state level or at regional level, have collaborated to come up with some sort of security arrangement that would bridge the gap, that would address some of the loopholes that we have or areas that have not been well addressed by either the Nigerian police or even the Nigerian military, which has also been drawn into the theater to address some of these gaps, even when it comes to domestic security. The likes of Amotekun easily comes to mind about regional security architecture to address some of these security challenges that continue to prevail in the country. So that and many more will be unpacking tonight on the program as we, dissect and interrogate some of the issues affecting Nigeria's national security and why this position by the 36 state governors is telling about what may eventually happen, because for the longest time it appears to be the idea of state police appears to be a mirage where a lot of talk has gone into it but not a lot of movement in terms of execution or in terms of implementation has happened, despite the severity of the cases around kidnapping, around banditry, around a whole lot of issues related to security. But at the end of the 147th meeting of the National Executive Council, the state governors have once again in unison spoken in support of the creation of state police. And tonight on the program, we're going to try to gauge what that means going forward. Well, before we get Dr. Kabir Adam to join the conversation, I'd like to open the conversation to you, our viewers. Let's hear what you have to say about it. So the phone lines will be open now, and your ideas, your thoughts would definitely be worth listening to, especially if you can give us your sense of what the problem is and how state policing will be a part of that solution. So feel free to chime in, give us a call. Let's start this conversation organically by listening to the voices of Nigerians, what you make of it. Is state police the answer? Will it be the panacea to national security challenges that Nigeria has faced and continues to face going forward? So let's listen in to our first caller. As always, good to hear Nigerian voices. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Okay. Well, I believe we do have Dr. Kabir now joining the conversation, so let's start it the way we initially planned on having it. Dr. Kabir Adam is the Chief Executive Officer, Beacon Security and Intelligence, and is also a renowned expert on security matters in Nigeria. Dr. Kabir, as always, a pleasure to have you join us on the program. Good evening to you. I just want to start. I just want to start the conversation by getting your 2 cents on this new resolution. I mean, it's not necessarily new, but it sends a clear message. All 36 state governors are speaking with one voice about state police, and they want it to become a reality. What do you make of it?
So I'm not surprised in the sense that it is an item in this current administration's agenda. If anyone who had taken his time or her time to look at the Renewed Hope agenda, you would have seen police reform featuring there prominently under the security imperative. We also know that when the ministers signed a performance bond with the president, I think this was in November 2023, specifically the Ministry of Police Affairs had police reform, mentioned specifically in one of the indicators for which the government will measure the success of that particular ministry. We also know that the National Assembly, particularly the House of Rep, has been quite determined in achieving police reform. And one of the elements of police reform is the issue of state police. Of course, we know when the NEC met last year, one of the instruments that came out of that meeting was the president discussing with some of the state governors and agreeing to some of the parameters, I would say, of the issue of state police. And the result, of course, is where we are today. It's also very possible that the instrumentality of the political negotiation and engagement has been used over this period to achieve what we've been told is 36 state governors supporting state police. One of the things that worried us, in the course of the conversation was in the Renewed Hope agenda, a few of the reform efforts were mentioned, but the one that was prominent was the so-called El Rufai Police Reform Committee,
right,
which was principally an APC objective. But we all know what is happening between El Rufai and the government at the moment. So it wasn't clear whether maybe because of that will proceed. But I think all of that probably has been put behind. And now what would likely happen is at some point, I think once the executive arm of government, using the instrument of the Economic Council, has come out with its position, which we hope to see in the first quarter of 2025. And the National Assembly, especially the House of Rep, has also moved forward with its attempt. Let's remember that before we can get state police, there has to be constitution review. The current constitution recognizes only a federal police. So irrespective of what NEC has done, even if it comes out holistically as state one state police, if the National Assembly does not review the constitution to allow state police, it can't happen. But we know that the governors have tremendous influence on the parliamentarians. And so since they are united, then it would probably be very easy. What I'm trying to say is the executive arm of government, headed by the president, the governors themselves at the subnational level, and then the National Assembly seems to be united on what they want, which is state police.
Right. And you talk about that alignment where we can understand that from the presidency to the governors and even elements within the National Assembly, there seems to be an alignment there. Even the police itself is speaking somewhat favorably. I mean, there were some incidents where, certain speakers at certain events have misspoken and had to be corrected a little later by the official statement from the Nigeria Police Force. But give me your assessment of how soon this can actually become a reality. For a lot of Nigerians who are dealing with security situations day in, day out, which is upending their lives, it couldn't have come any sooner. But how realistic is the timeline in your assessment? How soon can Nigerians have state police?
So my worry is this. As a country, we have not sat down to gather our thoughts
Hello, Dr. Kabir.
really.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yeah. We've lost the connection for a second there. So if you don't mind, please recap that thought of yours.
Okay, I was saying that my worry is that we haven't defined the concept of policing, and we're mixing the concept of policing with state police. Policing is a phenomenon which provides public order. Now, irrespective of whether you have an organ called Nigeria Police Force, we need policing. I don't really care what organ provides the policing, but the essence is that we should have public order. Laws that have been created should be enforced. The rule of law should be the order of the day. Now, we created an organ called the Nigeria Police Force to achieve that. But everybody, well, maybe not, let me not be too generous, a lot of us are of the view that that organ that we created has not been meeting our expectations. And so the concept of, or the discussions around the creation of state police now emerged. But we haven't really sat down to say, is the challenge the organ itself, or the fact that we haven't really come to terms with the concept of policing? So I am worried that if we go along with the trajectory of our conversation where we are at the moment, all we are going to do is to replicate the MPF, Nigeria Police Force, in 36 states. And so instead of dealing with one defective platform, we are now going to deal with probably 36 defective platforms.
Yeah, for most people, Dr. Kabir, pardon the interruption, that is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to have a semblance of what we have at the federal level, at the state level. But what is wrong with that idea if that is what we end up getting, in your view?
Well, what we want is improved public protection and security. If we're going to recreate organs that will not give us that, then we've moved in futility. What we should be discussing at the moment is how do we improve rule of law? How do we improve public security? If the answer is that creating state police is what should be, the way to go, then we can proceed. But we've not done that. We've not done a survey at the federal level to identify why we've not been able to get effective policing. The current structure of policing, I'm using my words carefully. If you notice, I didn't say the current structure of the Nigeria Police Force. I said the current structure of policing is balkanized in Nigeria. We have different ministries, departments, and agencies that are practicing policing, but that they are not in one place. So you have the Nigeria Police Force, you have elements of the Civil Defense Corps that is implementing policing work, you have the road safety that is implementing police work, you have EFCC, you have ICPC that are all implementing police work. You also have, to an extent, NIMASA and several others that are water-based that are also implementing police work. At no time has anybody sat down to say, okay, all of these are practicing policing work. In fact, what is even more annoying, for lack of, let me use that word, is that these balkanized institutions that I've described are situated in two different ministries. You have the Ministry of Police Affairs, which supervises kind of the police, Nigeria Police Force, and then you have all the others that I've mentioned that are now in the Ministry of Interior. And the handshake between these two ministries is extremely loose, so which means there is no coordination in policing function. And that's what we want to now translate down to the state levels. So that kind of worries me. And if I go back to your question, how soon do I think that was going to happen? It all depends on the speed with which the National Assembly proceeds with the Constitution review. We know they set a deadline for 2025. I worry that there are political dynamics going on at the moment that may play out. So we know, for instance, that this tax reform and this local government autonomy, there are key issues that are playing out at the federal level. So sometimes you see issues coming up, and then you see opposition. The opposition is not really because the governors are unhappy with the proposed issue, but they are unhappy with local government autonomy, and so they are using other issues to express that anger. Will they do that with the state police through the back door, for instance, at the parliament level, or will they even do it at the state level? Because remember, constitution review does not only require federal parliamentary approval, it also requires state parliament. I say that 2025 is a critical year. If it doesn't happen in 2025, 2026 is the pre-election year, and so many things will happen during that year, and I doubt if any major constitutional review will occur. So I'm hoping that it will happen in 2025.
Right, and I dare say that hope has become the key word over the past couple of years in Nigeria, because that is what most Nigerians are hanging on to in anticipation of what may or may not actually happen as a result of some of the reforms that we're seeing right now. But let's go back to one particular issue that you talked about, which you think is central to the conversation we're having right now, which is the idea of policing itself. That there are some foundational issues or fundamental issues that need to be addressed so that we don't repeat the same mistakes in the creation of state police. Do you think enough energy is being put into addressing the gaps that currently exist, so that even if we're going to have something different as part of the security architecture at the state level, that the federal police is still going to be fit for purpose? Do you think that this is also a part of the larger conversation that is going on right now?
A lot of convenings have occurred. I've attended several town hall meetings, conferences, and I must say debates have been had, and these are from practitioners, from experts, academicians, name them, both local and international. I personally have attended so many, and I've made my presentations. Others I've seen on TV and all of that. So I'm quite delighted. What I don't know is whether someone in government is collating the submissions from this, and that those submissions will be instrumental to the reform that is being envisaged. If that is not being done, because sometimes, as you know, already the government has a direction, and irrespective of what engagements and contributions are made, it's very rare and sometimes almost impossible for a shift in the outcome. And so I'm hoping that this won't be the case, because it would be unfortunate really if we go ahead and recreate defective structures. And some of the fears that we have, and one of the most I would say legitimate fear, is the possibility of abuse at the subnational level. People have given the example of Rivers State, with the current ongoing between the incumbent and his predecessor. Imagine a situation where the incumbent had the power of state police, and then of course the predecessor has the instrument of the federal police. Imagine what will happen in that state. Other examples have been given where the federal might and the state might at opposing views. A good example is Kano, where clearly some federal government officials are supporting one of the emirs, while state officials are supporting the other emir. Imagine what will happen in such a situation. So this is the legitimate fear of the possibility of using state police as an instrument to achieve political interest. We saw it in the First Republic, when the federal government attempted to use the federal police against the regional police, and some say it's one of the contributors of the coup in 1966. So I'm hoping that we've learned from mistakes. I'm hoping that, like I mentioned, the contributions that were made during this convening, and that will be made in subsequent convenings. Don't forget that NEC said after its debate, it would present its report to the public, and it would now hear the input of the public. So let's hope that all of this will be put together so that what would come out, there will be checks and balances. There are several other fears that have been raised apart from the possible abuse at the subnational level. Funding fears. Some states are finding it difficult to pay salary.
Right.
And one of the legitimate fears is how do you arm someone with the instruments of policing, and then you don't pay him salary? Imagine what would happen. So that again is a legitimate concern, and it must be addressed. The structure of policing itself, there are several components that are required. One of what worries me that is not being discussed enough, the concept of custodial centers have been decentralized. And at the moment, I hope I'm not wrong, but I'm not aware that any state has taken up that decentralization policy to build its own custodial center. So let's assume you have state police, and then the police make arrests, and then those persons are prosecuted. Where are they going to keep them? So those are legitimate issues that we need to take into consideration and make sure we really understand the direction that we're going to and the requirements of a policing system. I keep on referring to the concept of policing as different from the Nigeria police force. We need to first identify policing. What is it in the first place? How is policing related to public security? How do we ensure that when suspects are arrested, that they can be prosecuted, and then the entire conduit, as it were, of law enforcement and the criminal justice system is now in place? Or are we just so much in a hurry to create quote-unquote state police that we've not thought about all of this? This is what worries me.
Yeah, it sounds to me, Doctor, that you're saying that this, although there are certain issues that need to be fully addressed, but we are presented with an opportunity to, reverse engineer the entire system so that in terms of fixing it, we actually fix it the right way. But I just want to piggyback off of what you said earlier about funding, because that is a significant part of the equation that needs to be solved. As things stand right now, with everything that is going on, the inability of some states to fully implement the minimum wage. Over the years, we've seen how even at 18,000 naira, they're struggling to pay civil servants. Teachers are being underpaid. Even at the federal level, I mean, it's no longer news that the Nigeria Police Force itself is grossly underfunded. Talk to me about whether we can actually afford this white elephant project that some have described as the idea behind creating state police. Can we afford it in the true sense of an effective and, full of service-driven police force in this country, with the state police, that is?
Yes, we can afford it, but only if we block the current leakages that exist within the system. I'm one of the few persons that would tell you that it is a fallacy to say that the Nigerian police is underfunded.
It's a fallacy, Doctor?
Yes, it is a fallacy.
I mean, I'm sure you remember. I'm sure you remember Governor Diko Marada of Katsina State when he was granting an interview with an international media platform where he talked about just 20 guns available in an entire local government area, only 5 serviceable weapons, and so on and so forth. I mean, we don't have the numbers, and also when it comes to...
And that is correct. Honestly, what he said is exactly correct. But the point I'm trying to make is, because there is no accountability within the system, we've allowed a deployment system that is defective and that is not meeting our policing needs. You will be surprised if there is an event in Abuja where, let's say, 10 ministers are going to attend. In fact, maybe I've even taken it too high. Let's say there is an event and the Inspector General of Police is going to attend. And together with him, maybe the Commissioner of Police in Abuja, and then a few other DIGs will attend. I can bet you will find nothing less than 50, police vehicles of different, makes, and some of them, of course, armed with the necessary policing gear and requirement that you would never find in any local government in Nigeria. So what point am I trying to make? It's not that the resources are not available. It is that the resources are not judiciously deployed. So that is one. Two, the system is rife with corruption. Banks today have significant police deployment. In fact, nobody, even probably the Inspector General of Police, cannot tell you the number of police that are deployed to commercial banks. And I can bet you for each one of those persons, a significant money is being paid, probably more than the salary of the operative that is deployed. Now, where does that money go to? Then go to the oil companies. A couple of years ago, a serving senator stood up in the hollow chambers and alleged that every month 10 billion naira comes from these types of deployment. Nobody disputed that claim by that senator. And I can bet you that that money is more than the 10 billion that he mentioned. So that's why I'm saying that the issue of underfunding is a fallacy. If we can block these leakages and recoup this money that, for commercialized policing, as it were, and now use it for the Nigerian police force, nobody would say that the Nigerian police force is underfunded. That's just one aspect of it. The other aspect is police now has commercialized some of its processes. For example, you want the police character report. Depending on what country you go to, you pay as much as 100,000 or more, depending on which country. And you know how Nigerians love traveling. So multiply that by the number of persons who are applying for it. Then students, workers, foreign workers and local workers who have lived in Nigeria. So the number is huge. That's why I repeat again, it's a fallacy. We need to block these leakages and make sure those monies are coming into the treasury or at least into the Nigeria Police Fund accounts, and that they are being used for the good of the police and not for individuals who are enriching themselves from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with some of the points there about mismanagement and some of the illicit activities that is impacting the operations of the Nigerian police, generally speaking, but also a lot of people would point to the dilapidated state of infrastructure, the lack of operational vehicles in some cases, armament issues, and so on and so forth, especially at the local level where security is much needed in parts of northern Nigeria, for instance, where you're dealing with banditry and a whole variety of insecurity. You realize that these spaces have become, open, and it's rife with all sort of criminal activities. But let's switch gears and talk about what, in an ideal situation, if we end up with a state police in 2025, help me understand from your experience studying the various security architectures of other countries and how they function, what it would look like with the close to 400,000 plus or thereabout of the current police force that we have. What would it look like, and what should it look like if we end up having a state police? What kind of relationship would they eventually have with the federal police that is already in existence?
So there are different models, but there are commonalities within the different models. Number one commonality is the structure and authorization. So as an example, I think Nigeria is the only federal system that does not have a decentralized policing system. And what that means is we have a unified policing system, but if it's now, if we create state police, there will be the federal police, which would be headed, as it were, by the Inspector General of Police, but then we would now have state police structures that are independent from the federal police and that are now run and headed by commissioners of police. Now, some of the models would have the jurisdiction of the various structures. In some models, you even have, let's say, local government, because that's what we have. Or in other countries, it will be regions. So you'd have regional police. Or you would even have community police. And by that community police, it means, aside from communities having their police, even organized communities like schools will have, so universities, for instance, will now have their own police. But what will be instrumental is the jurisdiction of each of these levels. So the federal police will have their jurisdiction. In other words, there are offenses that when they are committed, it would now be handled by the federal police. There will be offenses that when committed, it will be handled by the state police, of course, down to the community police. In certain instances, there will be offenses that all of these structures will work together on them. And then there will also be handshakes between them, sharing of information, sometimes even joint operations and all of that. But all of that will be spelled out in the mandate and the structure that will be created. Then there's also the issue of the type of relationship that will be had between them. So as an example, a criminal commits an offense that is a federal offense, and it happens at the state level. What would happen? Would the police now just fold its arms, or will they now call the federal police? So all of that will be spelled out in the systems. But like I said, there are different models that apply around the world. The UK model is there, the US model is there, but the South African model is there. So I'm hoping that we'll look at all of these models, contextualize them to our own. One of the concerns that I raised earlier on is abuse. So the US model, as an example, is one that we could copy from, where the commissioner of police is elected. He's just like the mayor, he's elected. He does not have, no arm of government has control over him. So that gives him some level of autonomy, and you would expect that the governor would not have absolute control over him as well.
You don't think
another concept?
Yeah, Doctor. Pardon the interruption again. Yeah. You don't think this could be counterproductive if we decide to politicize the administrative roles of the Nigerian police like they do in the United States, for instance?
Well, so this brings us to the next point, which is our electoral system. And that is why a lot of us feel we're not yet ripe for state policing. We are perhaps putting the cart before the horse. Why don't we first improve the democratic tenets at the state level, where especially the legislature, because the legislature has a huge role to play in this regard, strengthen democracy at the state level so that you have a viral and independent legislature that plays its role of checks and balance on the governor. And then, of course, that means you will not have emperors like we have at the moment as governors who have absolute control in their states and can determine and on the timing. Of course, I agree with you that politicizing the role, as it were, of the commissioner of police, it can be bankrolled by a governor. And so because the governor that bankrolls him, he would play to his biddings, as it were. But that's one model that, of course, can copy from. But the only way it will be successful is if the democratic tenets at the state level is advanced to a point where the legislature is largely independent and not in the pockets of the governor as they are at the moment. And of course, it also means that subsequent commissioners that would emerge would be largely immune to the manipulation of governors and all of that. Because if we don't do this, then that abuse that I spoke about earlier is a reality, and it's a recipe for disaster. If we have emperors who have the legislature in their pocket, who will now also have the instrument of force at their disposal, you can imagine what will happen.
Now, it does appear that from the 147th session of the National Economic Council, that all is set for this big idea that is not necessarily new, even in practice for Nigeria. But looking at where we are right now, in this very peculiar phase of our journey as a nation, with all the multiple challenges around security in all parts of the country. Give me a sense of, whether Nigerians can really expect this to be the panacea, that this is going to be the silver bullet that restores law and order, that allows Nigerians to go to bed every day of the week with both eyes closed, not worried about an attack, families not worried about their family members or loved ones getting kidnapped on the highway, farmers not having to worry about the concerns of going to their farms and returning safely, and so on, and all of these other issues. Is this the panacea to our national security challenge?
I'm sorry to disappoint anyone who is supportive of state police, that no, it would not be the panacea. What would be the panacea is to have a democratic system where the will of the people are not just recognized, but are respected. And that would translate from the federal system down to the state system, and then, of course, down to the local government system. If we just continue along the line of the conversations we're having right now, and just create state police without defining and agreeing what we want in policing, then I'm sorry to say that we're not going to solve the issue. One of the, if you look at the drivers of insecurity in Nigeria, those things that trigger insecurity, yes, abuse of force and the rules of engagement by state security agencies is one of them, just like we saw during NSAS. But it's way down the ladder. You have to tick so many other things before you reach that particular one. So we need to look at governance. We need to look at the role of governance in addressing developmental challenges. It is only then that we will now talk about the instrument of policy implementation, in which, of course, the police, the military, and the others are all one of them. If we continue to use force to suppress dissent, which is unfortunately what is happening at the moment, then what we are going to have is a continuation of the involvement of, armed groups that are now being used, as it were, to exert some form of influence. And this is a challenge of all developing countries. So I hope our politicians understand that. If the intention of the governors is to create police so that they can suppress dissent or activities of criminals and non-state groups without improving on governance and addressing the root causes and triggers of insecurity, and I'll quickly mention them: economic challenges, environmental issues, political issues. If we don't address these developmental challenges, even if we have, let's say, out of the 200 million, we make 15 million Nigerians police, we'll still have this insecurity challenge that we have at the moment.
All right. It does appear that from your assessment and analysis, there's the potential that this could be a solution. However, we shouldn't put all our basket in this idea of state police being the ultimate answer. There are a lot more deeper issues that need to be addressed. Well, it's something that you can imagine Nigerians are keen on, and perhaps the next year would be quite pivotal, especially from your projection. If it doesn't happen next year, it may likely not happen until after the 2027 election. We're going to have to leave it here for now, but as always, Dr. Kabir Adamu, thank you so much for the analysis and for your insight on this one. We appreciate you for joining us on Daily Politics tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you so much too for having me. I'm traveling, so the internet where I am is not so good.
I can understand. Yeah. I can understand. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Have a nice evening.
All right. Dr. Kabir Adamu there, the Chief Executive of Beacon Security and Intelligence, speaking to us about the potential of state police being the solution, while also highlighting a variety of issues that need to be addressed to get Nigeria's national security functional and optimally working in the interest of Nigerians. We have at least 6 minutes to spare. We're opening the phone lines now so you can chime in on the conversation. Let's have your take. What do you make of it? Especially having listened to a seasoned expert on security matters talk about the upside as well as the downsides to the idea of state policing in Nigeria, what it can do, what it may not do, what it can achieve, what it cannot achieve, and so the structural issues. Let's have your say on this one. Feel free to call in. We would love to hear your take, your opinion, your thoughts. If you have any questions, I'm afraid I may not be able to answer it, but I would appreciate you to be a part of the conversation. Let's speak to our first caller then. Hello, good evening.
Yeah, this is Shamaki from Nasralti.
Shamaki, as always, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Go ahead, please. Where do you stand?
Good evening, Abdullahi, Ahmed. Good evening.
Good evening, Shamaki. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am seeing it on the screen, television, that police will get a green light. You see, it's a nice step because the situation in the country, because many people cannot be able to meet up with their challenges. But the question some of us are asking, if that is being done, will the police stop extortion and brutalizing people on the road? Because they are the one found in doing that among the agencies. Sorry to say this, among the agencies of prosecutors. So I believe with this step they have stopped their habit practice they are doing on the road for ordinary citizens.
Right. Yeah, but Shamaki, what do you think about state police? Do you support the idea that states should have their own police separate from what we currently have?
Pardon, what did you say?
Are you in support of the idea of creating state police so that we have two separate bodies who are working in tandem to provide security?
Yeah, it's good. It can help in curtailing the situation. But the problem is that if that is being allowed or being done, some of the governors can use state police and do whatever they want to do during election, because we've seen it. They use this, what do you call it, this local police that then created in their various states. So this is our fears, but it's good. But if that is being allowed, so many governors can use the advantage. So this is the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah. And I understand where you're coming from with that argument. Thank you very much, Shamaki, as always, for being a part of the conversation. Yeah, we really do appreciate you for calling in. And that is just re-echoing the concerns of so many Nigerians who say we need safeguards, we need protective mechanisms that would stop any undue political interference in the event that we end up having state police. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Daily Politics. Your name, please, and where you're calling from.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Yusuf.
Yusuf, where are you calling from, please?
I'm calling from Kuje.
All right. Yusuf from Kuje in Abuja. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so very much. I don't know how we can make our policing to be more effective, but I have a suggestion. I don't know if the way other countries run their policing can be done in Nigeria. The commentator, our own Kabiru, doctor, he spoke on the monies that we are being paid by different group of people and agencies to the police for providing security for them, instead of providing security for the nation. They now do security for individuals. Now, the question is this: those money that are being paid, where are they going to? You see, those monies are supposed to go to government coffers. They should form part of the budgetary allocation for the police. If you look at other crimes, somebody will be arrested, he will be fined, he will pay the fine, and the fine goes to government coffers. A lot of those money are being used to service these security agencies. Now, back to state police. I've seen a lot of times where the local police are the ones that secure people more. Why? Because they know those people in their locality. A local police officer almost knows all the people around him. If one person is missing, he knows that person is missing. I saw a documentary, there is a live documentary, where a policeman went to the house of somebody and said, I've not seen so person for almost 3 weeks. And at the end of the day, it was learned that the person disappeared. The letter found the person dead. So this is the type of system that we need. where the police is not so cumbersome that they cannot be able to do anything. There should be responsibility, whereby somebody is responsible for somebody. But here it is a general term. It is not my business. It's not my business. I'm just doing police work. They should be responsible. And the only time we can have that is when we have state police. People policing people they can account for. People policing people who they know. People policing people whose character and their culture they know. That is the only way we can have a very good policing in Nigeria.
Yeah.
That is my take, my brother.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yusuf. Really appreciate your invaluable contribution on this one, and I must say that it does make a lot of sense. And some people have actually termed that community policing, which can also be misconstrued for state policing at the same time. But I do get the point, and thank you so much for joining the conversation. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take any more calls because we've run out of time. But as always, you can expect us to return this Sunday, where we'll also give you yet another opportunity to be a part of the program. But for now, thank you so much for taking the time and for joining us on the program. Feel free to follow us, as always, across our social media platforms just to stay in touch. You can also visit our website, trusttv.com, for the latest news, programs, and documentaries. My name is Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you for your time and watching the program. Good night.